Hi everyone, I'm Francis, a doctoral student from Cypher Research Group from Institute of Physics, University of Tartu. In this video, I'll be presenting our recent research work published in Optics and Lasers Technology on imaging through thin scattering layers using specially engineered light beams. Imagine trying to photograph a cell deep inside biological tissue through highly scattering surface of skin. The light gets scrambled. What reaches your camera looks like pure noise and not an image. This is one of the most stubborn problems in optical imaging, and it matters enormously in biomedical diagnosis, remote sensing, and anywhere light must travel through turbid media. The conventional approach tries to fight the scattering using complex wavefront corrections or heavy computation. But what if, instead, you could engineer your light beam so that object information survives the scattering and can still be encoded to the other side? That's exactly the question we set out to answer. In this work, we present computational imaging through scatterer using spatially structured optical beams, abbreviated as CITS-SSOB, a computational imaging framework that uses specially structured light beams combined with an iterative reconstruction algorithm to image through thin scattering layers. And the results reveal something surprising. Not all beams are equal, and the beam properties matter more than you might expect. Several imaging approaches have been proposed to address these challenges. Physics-based techniques rely on wavefront shaping, transmission matrix measurements, holography, and point spread function reconstruction. AI-based methods instead use deep learning methods trained with scattered intensity distributions. In incoherent imaging systems, image reconstruction is commonly performed using the point spread function and object intensity, combined with computational deconvolution algorithms. At the same time, spatially structured optical beams, including Bessel beams, array beams, vortex beams, and higher order Bessel beams, have demonstrated resilience to scattering and self-healing propagation properties. However, previous studies mainly focused on beam propagation through scattering media rather than embedding these beams into an invasive point spread function based imaging in temporally coherent and spatially incoherent illumination framework. To address this gap, we propose a new computational imaging framework called CITS-SSOB. The proposed framework integrates spatially structured optical beams as carrier beams to encode object information through a thin scatterer under temporally coherent and spatially incoherent illumination. The goal of this research work is to evaluate the imaging performance of spatially structured optical beams under different scattering conditions. The optical configuration of the proposed CITS-SSOB framework consists of 4 stages: object illumination, spatial beam encoding using coded masks, propagation through a thin scattering layer, computational reconstruction using a deconvolution algorithm. Light from an object point propagates through a refractive lens and reaches the coded masks displayed on the spatial light modulator. The coded face mask generates a spatially structured optical beam abbreviated as SSOB. These SSOBs act as carrier waves that encode object information before propagation through the scattering layer. The modulated beam then propagates through the diffuser, and scattered intensity distribution is recorded at the image sensor. 2 measurements are recorded: the point spread function and the response to object intensity. By processing the point spread function and the response to object intensity, the object information is reconstructed using a well-established Lucey-Richardson-Rosen algorithm, abbreviated as LR-array. The LR-array is the combination of forward convolution, nonlinear reconstruction, and iterative optimization. The nonlinear reconstruction operation controls the spectral magnitude of Fourier transform of point spread function and response to object intensity using the parameters alpha and beta. The reconstruction object image quality is evaluated using 2 quantitative metrics: root mean square error, RMSE, entropy. Then, coming to the experimental part, this is the optical experimental setup that we used for this research work. The illumination unit consists of LED source of 660 nanometer and an iris to control the illumination diameter, a ground glass diffuser to scramble the incoming wavefronts, refractive lenses for collimation, linear polarizer aligned along the active axis of the spatial light modulator to achieve effective modulation. The object plane consists of either a 50 micrometer pinhole for recording point spread function or a USAF test target digit 4 with a line width of 44.19 micrometers. For recording response to object intensity, several coded masks were displayed sequentially on the spatial light modulator to generate different SSOBs, which include axicon for generating Bessel beam, spiral axicon for generating higher order Bessel beam, cubic face mask for generating airy beam, diffractive lenses with azimuthally varying focal length for generating self-rotating beam, spiral face plate for generating vortex beam. The generated beams are propagated through diffusers of two scattering strengths, a weak scatterer of 1500 grit and a strong scatterer of 600 grit. Imaging at two depths were analyzed. ZS is equal to 4.5 cm and ZS equal to 5 cm. We have also performed cross-plane imaging. In the cross-plane imaging, the response to object intensity was recorded at depth 4.5 cm, was reconstructed using the point spread function recorded at the depth 5 cm. So the propagation distances from the SLM to diffuser is 12.5 cm and diffuser to image sensor is 11 cm. The following experimental cases were investigated: absence of scatterer with SSOBs, absence of SSOBs with scatterer, presence of SSOBs with weak scatterer, presence of SSOBs with strong scatterer. For all cases, cross-plane imaging was also investigated by reconstructing the object information using point spread functions recorded at different depths. The face masks employed in this research work includes axicon, spiral axicon with different topological charges, cubic face masks, diffractive lens with azimuthally varying focal length, spiral face plate were selected as representative generators of commonly studied structured beam classes. In the experiments, we break down the experimental results comparing the imaging capabilities of structured optical beams including Bessel, higher order Bessel, vortex and self-rotating and airy beams. The experimental results of the baseline study are shown here for the absence of scatterer case for the depths ZS is equal to 4.5 cm and ZS is equal to 5 cm and cross-plane imaging. The point spread function and the response to object intensity and the reconstruction results obtained from LR array are shown in rows 1, 2 and 3 for Bessel beam, higher order Bessel beam, for topological charges 1, 3 and 5, airy beam, self-rotating beam and the vortex beam for topological charges 1, 3 and 5 for depths ZS is equal to 4.5 cm and 5 cm. And the cross-plane imaging are depicted in the figures A, B and C respectively. The cross-plane imaging involves reconstructing the response to object intensity recorded at ZS is equal to 4.5 cm using the point spread function recorded at ZS is equal to 5 cm. The SSOBs that fall under the pseudo non-diffracting beam categories such as Bessel beams and their variants with orbital angular momentum, airy beams and self-rotating beams demonstrate better imaging performances compared to vortex beam. In contrast, vortex beam failed to retrieve the object information. This behavior is attributed to the spiral face plate containing only an azimuthal phase term without a focusing lens term being utilized in the coded mask generation. Among all SSOBs, the airy beam consistently demonstrated superior imaging performance and achieved the high reconstruction fidelity. The graph shown here compares the reconstruction quality obtained from different structured optical beams using two important quantitative metrics, the RMSE, entropy. These values are calculated from the reconstruction images obtained for each beam. So for good imaging performance, we generally want low RMSE and low entropy. Both RMSE and entropy are plotted for SSOBs such as Bessel beam, higher order Bessel beam, airy beam, vortex beam. For every beam, the object was reconstructed and the RMSE and entropy were calculated from the reconstruction results. This allows us to directly evaluate which beam produces the most accurate and the best reconstruction result. From the plot, we can clearly observe that the Airy beam consistently shows the lowest RMSE and entropy values at both imaging depths. This means the reconstructed image is closest to the original object. The noises and the randomness are minimal and the image quality is superior compared to all other beams. So based on the both quantitative metrics, the Airy beam demonstrates the overall best imaging performance. This superior imaging performance of Airy beams comes from its unique propagation characteristics known for its non-diffracting, self-healing and curved trajectories. These imaging properties help preserve the object information during imaging and reconstruction. As a result, the Airy beam maintains high image fidelity compared to other SSOBs. In the next baseline study, imaging performance was investigated in the presence of scatterer without SSOBs. The goal was to analyze the imaging performance in the absence of SSOBs when scatterers were introduced into the optical system. To perform this baseline study, a diffractive lens function was displayed on the spatial light modulator with a focal length of 22 centimeters. Same as previous study, a weak and strong scatterer was employed and the imaging was performed for the depth ZS 5 cm and the cross-plane imaging. The point spread function, response to object intensity and the reconstruction results of LR array are shown in columns 1 and 2 for depth ZS is equal to 5 cm and the cross-plane imaging. For the cross-plane imaging, the point spread function is recorded at the depth 5 cm and the response to object intensity was recorded at depth 4.5 cm. This was used as an input cross-plane pair to reconstruct the object information using LR array. The RMSE and entropy values were calculated for the reconstruction results and plotted for axial location for depth ZS 5 cm and the cross-plane case. From the results, it is clearly visible that the inability of the Gaussian beams to retrieve the object image across depths leading to a significant degradation of spatial information in the presence of a thin scattering layer. Although the object can still be partially reconstructed at the same imaging depth, the cross-plane image results in severe distortion, increased RMSE and higher entropy, indicating loss of reconstruction fidelity and spatial consistency. This demonstrates that conventional Gaussian beam-based imaging lacks robustness against depth variations and scattering effects. Therefore, SSOBs are employed for recovery of object image across depths as they were specifically designed to preserve the spatial information, to maintain stronger correlation across imaging planes, and to improve the reconstruction performance even in scattering environments. Following the baseline studies, a weak scatterer of 1500 grit diffuser was introduced to evaluate the imaging performance of different SSOBs at depths 4.5 cm and 5 cm and the cross-plane imaging conditions. The point spread function, response to object intensity and the reconstruction results obtained from LR array are shown in rows 1, 2 and 3 for all beams and for all depths. The RMSE and entropy for each reconstruction results are calculated and plotted here. From this, it is observed that Airy beam, Bessel beam and self-rotating beam exhibit superior imaging performances compared to other beams. Here, the vortex beam shows improved recovery of object spatial information in this weak scattering condition compared to the baseline study. In the cross-plane imaging, similar performance was observed for Airy and self-rotating beam, whereas Bessel beams allows only partial image reconstruction with degraded image quality. In contrast, higher order Bessel beams and other SSOBs fail to preserve sufficient spatial information for successful cross-plane imaging under the same conditions. The RMSE and entropy values were calculated from the reconstruction results and plotted for all depths is shown here. The plots validate that the Airy beams exhibit superior performance both in terms of RMSE and entropy. Next, the imaging performance of SSOBs was further evaluated under a strong scatterer of 600 grit diffuser by replacing the weak scatterer of 1500 grit diffuser in the experiment, and the complete point spread function and the response to object intensity was recorded. This allowed a systematic comparison across the absence, weak and strong scattering conditions. The experiment was carried out for depths 4.5 centimeters, 5 centimeter and cross-plane imaging condition is shown here. The point spread function, response to object intensity and the reconstruction results obtained using LRRA are shown in rows 1, 2 and 3 for all beams and for all cases. Similar to the previous studies, the array beam and the self-rotating beam exhibit superior imaging performances. Again, the vertex beam shows improved recovery of object spatial information in this strong scattering condition compared to the baseline study 1, wherein the absence of a scatterer with SSOBs case. In cross-plane imaging, the array beam retained the object spatial information more effectively than the other SSOBs, validating its robustness under strong scattering conditions. Overall, the results confirm that the array beams provide most reliable imaging performances in both same plane, cross-plane reconstruction under strong scattering condition. This observation is quantitatively validated by the RMSE and entropy plots. The interesting observation is that the performance of vertex beam has again improved when compared to the SSOBs other than array beam and SRB when the strength of the scatterer is increased. The performance of the array beam and self-rotating beam for both the same and cross planes are found to be better than those of the rest of the beams. So, what we have seen in this video so far, structured light beams are not just a propagation curiosity, they are powerful information carriers. And when you choose the right beam, you can dramatically improve your ability to recover the object spatial information through a scattering layer. Across every condition, we tested weak scattering, strong scattering, and even cross-plane imaging where the depth of point spread function and the object doesn't match. The array beam consistently came out on top, not simply because it resists scattering, but because its asymmetric, self-accelerating nature preserves depth-dependent structure in the point spread function, giving our reconstruction algorithm some meaningful information to work with. This work opens a clear path forward, designing beams not just for propagation but specifically for reconstruction performance combined with more advanced algorithm and extended towards non-invasive configuration. We believe this direction holds real promise for applications in biomedical imaging and remote sensing. Finally, a huge thank you to my supervisors, Professor Vijay, Professor Rosen, and my colleague Shiva for their invaluable guidance and support throughout this project. Also, I would like to thank the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program under Grant Agreement CIFER for funding this research project. Thank you for watching, and if you'd like to dive deeper, the full paper is linked in the description below. Thank you.